I said we will have a real cool time tonight. I said we will have a real cool time tonight.
All right, this is Cone's Cave. I'm Cone from Sum 41. I'm back. This is season 4, episode 1. I'm happy to be back. Thank you to Adobe Radio for having me back. And I have a good one. I like to start my seasons out with a great guest. And I have a great guest this week. I have Pierre from Simple Plan on my show, who I'll say is kind of like a new friend of mine and our band. And you might be thinking like, new friend? Haven't you guys known each other and been friends for a long time? Well, it's a little complicated. We haven't always been friends. We haven't always been friendly with each other. And it started way back in 2000. I don't even know if I want to tell the story because it's just water under the bridge now. We are friends. We have done many tours together in the last few years. In America, in Europe, again in America. So it is water under the bridge, and we are friends now, Sum 41 and Simple Plan. All right, I'll tell you the story. And I will say it started out as our fault. It was our fault. Our bands got into a little rift with each other. It started in 2000. We had Half Hour Power out, and Chuck from Simple Plan was a writer for a newspaper or magazine. I'm not really sure, one or the other. He wrote a review on Half Hour Power and said some nice things about Half Hour Power, but also gave it some critiques as reviewers do, and gave it a 2.5 stars out of 5. 2.5 out of 5, which is fine. And we didn't even know anything about it until our A&R guy from our label, Aquarius, showed it to us and was like, this guy gave you a bad review. He's in this band called Simple Plan. We'd never heard of Simple Plan. They hadn't come out with a record yet. But, you know, we quickly learned about Simple Plan. And he got us all riled up, and we were about 19, 20 years old. And at that time, you have to understand, we were from a small town in Ajax, population 40,000, no movie theater, no mall, not a lot of restaurants, hardly any bars. So we were always bored. We were always up for causing mischief, if you call it mischief in Ajax. And we were really good at it. So we kind of took that mentality on the road with us. And we loved just screwing around, having fun, mostly at the expense of other people. And when stuff like this came up, we were like, yeah, okay, well, what? Had a bad review, saying stuff about our record? All right, well, it's on. And so we decided we were going to start this thing with Simple Plan, and it was bullshit. And I applaud Simple Plan for actually coming back on us. And it started a whole thing. For years and years and years, we would talk shit about each other in the press. Every time we did interviews and they came up, we would talk shit about them, but they would come back at us. Every time they did interviews, they would talk shit about us, and it kept going. They were funny and we were funny, and it just kept going back and forth for years and years and years. And we tried to become friends throughout, 20 years of this going on, and it died off, and we didn't care about it anymore, and they didn't care about it anymore. It was so stupid how it all started, and we had grown up, and we were like, why are we really teenagers fighting about a stupid review way back in 2000? Because we certainly didn't care about it anymore. I think we just thought it was funny after a while, and as they did, I'm sure too. But I think we both realized, like, why haven't we toured together ever? I mean, two of the biggest pop punk bands to come out of Canada, if not the biggest pop punk bands to come out of Canada. How come we've never done a tour together? And at that point, around 2022, we decided we were going to go do a tour, a co-headline tour through the States with Simple Plan. Derek ended up doing a song with them. We went on tour. It's like, they're nice guys, and we're nice guys, and we got along great. And we kind of were like, how come we haven't been friends all along, and how come we haven't done any of these tours? And so, we ended up bringing them to Europe too. They supported us in Europe. Then we went back to America, and we both supported The Offspring last summer. So we're friends now, and I'm so happy it's over. And I'm so happy that I can call those guys my friends now. And I'm happy to have Pierre from Simple Plan on my show this week as my first guest of season 4 on Adobe Radio. Let's get this going. It's going to happen after this. All right, this is Cone's Cave. I'm Cone from Sum 41, and I have, as my guest this week, Pierre from Simple Plan on my show. This is season 4, episode 1. I'm back. I took a couple weeks off, but I'm back with Cone's Cave, season 4. Sum 41, Simple Plan. We have a lot of history together. Some bad, but now good. I'm happy about the good. Not so happy about the bad. Happy about the good. Happy about the tours we just did together too in the last few years. So just sit back and listen to two guys that I'm not saying that Pierre and I didn't really get along, because I don't think me and Pierre didn't get along, but listen to two guys that are really newly friends now. Like, we are new friends after 24 years of knowing each other. We are now friends with each other, and he can come on my show and we can talk like friends. Here we go. Here's my conversation with Pierre of Simple Plan.
Hello.
Hey.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm all right. How's being home?
It's been really good. First days were a lot of just kind of recovering and slowing down, and now back in the groove of being home and leaving on Sunday.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I was like, I cannot believe these guys have to leave already again.
Well, you guys had that sort of similar situation in the summer. I mean, you guys were between a tour in the U.S. and the European tour. You guys were just nonstop. So.
Yeah. I feel like there was something like that in there. And what's the Canadian tour? 3 weeks?
It's 4 weeks.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it's long. But then we have December, January, February off. So we're nice and downtime. Honestly, like after when Offspring rescheduled the tour for these coming dates here, we really thought about it hard. We had kind of a lot of band meetings about like, fuck man, like we want to do this tour. We've been trying to make it happen for the last year and a half, but oh man, the timing is not good. But we eventually just kind of like bit the bullet and said, we can't let them down, and we want to. It's a good tour, so it'll be fun.
I think it's going to be good for you guys.
Oh yeah.
I think it was when we did it with them right before the pandemic. It was really good for us. It's like, it's always good, like playing in front of people. They're an older band, obviously. So it's like playing in front of people that'd be like, I wouldn't go to a Sum 41 show, but man, I like them. I didn't know they were like this.
Yeah, it's good to do that. Even like the tour that we did with you guys in the US, like I think both of us benefited from, having fans of the other bands sort of being like, maybe like you said, maybe wouldn't go for a ticket if it's just one of us, but the two together, and they're like, oh, I'll try it. And then after that, they're like, oh shit, that was great. I'd see them again.
Yeah, exactly. I think the tour, like us and you guys, I think that worked out perfectly for both of us. But I do want to talk about, I had a very, very interesting conversation with Chuck actually on the last day at the end of the tour. I guess we could call it party. So I want to talk about that a little bit, because it kind of struck me and it made a lot of sense to me. And he was saying, when you guys first came out, he was talking about the trajectory of the band and where you guys headed, and what direction you guys headed. And we had a really good conversation. He was saying like, K-Rock was playing one of your songs, Addicted, maybe?
Yeah, it was either that or I'd Do Anything, one of the two. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think he said Addicted, but maybe
he would know more than I would.
And then so he said, then you guys took the Avril tour, and then K-Rock dropped the song.
Yeah.
And then you guys got pigeonholed in this more pop world. And he was telling me about like, so then, kind of put you guys into that world of like not modern rock radio anymore and pop radio. So from your standpoint, like, I'm of the opinion of like no path for a band is the right path. Like you just have to do what you can do in this crazy music business. So I don't think it was wrong for you guys to do that. I just think you just do what you can do to try and survive as a band. What was your kind of opinion at that time, and what was going on?
Yeah, I think it was a very different time. I'm not sure how radio works, if it's as segregated as it was before. But yeah, you definitely like were either getting played on rock radio and, you know, quote unquote, you were a little cooler and a little edgier, or you were on pop. And I think the appeal of being on pop is that there's a lot of stations and it's like, it's, you know, it's just, it's a whole other world. Right. And we felt when the band first started that we had a little bit of support. Like you said, like K-Rock was playing our song, and I mean, not in heavy rotation, but it was like picking it up. Yeah. But we knew that our record was leaning a little bit more pop, and we had this opportunity to do the Avril tour. And it was at the time, I mean, she was just massive. And we felt like, hey, do we say no to this? And do we sort of like try to stick to our guns and stay to rock radio? And who knows if it's going to work out for us? Or we seem to be getting a lot of attention from pop radio and like MTV and all that stuff. And you know, bands like Blink and Green Day were like they'd crossed over. And once you cross over, it's a different story because you kind of already established yourself as a rock band. So they feel like they own part of you, where we hadn't really had the time yet to really build that on rock radio. So it was definitely something we talked about. The Avril tour was something that we knew that it would come with some consequence, but we were hoping that the gamble was going to pay off and we'd be able to be in front of more people and therefore just reach more people. And that was the whole goal. You know, the whole goal was to like, how can we get our music in front of more people and in more radio stations and having people hear it. And then from there, we could just be whatever we want to be, you know, and sort of go from there. I think that, you know, it's kind of been the trajectory of the band from the beginning. We're a band that's, you know, we were kind of raised on Warped Tour, started on Warped Tour, but at the same time had a foot in MTV and VH1 and all those big, you know, TV stations that were pushing as well. And so we kind of like always made the dance of like, yeah, we're an alternative band because our music's kind of alternative and our fans are kind of those people. But at the same time, we have these kind of pop leaning songs that could be big hits that cross over, like Perfect and, you know, Welcome to My Life, all that kind of stuff. Yep. And we've kind of like played that dance. To be honest, looking back, I mean, I think it's been really beneficial for us to do that. But at the same time, it's, you know, there's some pros and some cons. And there's definitely been a lot of rock stations and rock people, you know, that are kind of like, no, I don't listen to Simple Plan. That's a pop band. So who knows, you know, you don't have a crystal ball. You can't go back and say like, what would have happened if we did this or that. I think that, you know, we look back and we have a super healthy career and, you know, we're still here. We've got great numbers and we sell tickets. And our fans have been incredibly supportive and we just feel super blessed. So the journey is the journey. Yeah. But yeah, at the time it was, you know, we knew by taking that tour that it was going to sort of immediately sort of extinguish this little mini fire that we'd started on rock radio. And sure enough, it did. The K-Rock dropped the song. But then all the Z100s and the Kiss FMs all picked it up. Yeah. And that translated into, you know, later on down the road, millions of record sales. And we built a huge fan base. But I think in some ways, because of that, we sort of became this band that was like the gateway drug for people that didn't really listen to pop punk and weren't really in that scene. They would like discover Simple Plan through MTV or whatever pop station that was in their town. And then they would be like, oh, look at that. There's like all these other bands like, you know, like whether it's you guys or other bands that maybe these people, it wasn't on their radar. And, you know, they find out Good Charlotte, then they find out The Used, then they find out Story of the Year, they find out Yellow Card. And so it's that's kind of the role that we took, was like that band that plays pop punk, but that's like on pop events, you know, pop festivals, pop radio shows, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, also like taking that Avril tour, you're playing in front of 15 to 20,000 people every day. Like, how are you gonna?
It was awesome
to do that. At that
we saw. I mean, that really helped us ignite the record sales. We went on that tour, and our label was like, every place that you guys go play a show, we see, you know, a few hundreds or thousands of copies sold in those record stores. So keep doing it, you know. So yeah, it was a big opportunity, and we felt like, you know, and I think it's kind of like, it's funny because it's really who we are as a band. We're not ever playing that card of like, I'm too cool for this or I'm too heavy for this. We're kind of like, hey, we're gonna go and put ourselves in front of whoever's available, and we'll just be ourselves and see what happens, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good outlook. And I mean, it's like, I mean, I think today now, I think music's looked at way differently. Like back then, I think you're right. It's like you're on pop radio or you're on rock radio. And actually, our band, we were gonna cross over in Too Deep, and our label goes, well, you could probably sell a couple more million records, but I don't think you should do it. And then looking back on it, we've talked about it. We're like, we maybe should have done that. Like, why didn't we do that? And, Blink did it and they survived. And there's tons of bands. Green Day crossed over. So that, it's interesting, like, to look back on those times and who steered you in what direction and what you did. But I think nowadays, music's just music. It's not like, I don't know. And you guys were probably a heavy pop band on pop radio. Yeah. Like, holy shit, there's so many guitars. And, but yeah, I just think music nowadays is just music. It's like, it's rock music. It's not like, oh, you're on pop radio or you're a pop punk band or you're a rock band or you're a punk band. It's just like, it's just music now, which I actually like.
Yeah, I think in some ways, I think the tables have kind of turned a little bit. Back in those days, rock radio was a little bit more sort of off the beaten path, like cool, some stuff that you've never heard before. And I feel like now, and pop radio was more conservative, and yes, they'll play a little bit of guitars, but not too much. They don't want to upset their fan base. And I feel like now the tables have kind of turned. Pop radio plays, because the nature of pop artists has become so edgy in some ways, like, Billie Eilish or stuff that I don't even know about. It's just like really kind of like dark and sort of super edgy, gets played on pop radio, and then the rock radio is more sort of like conservative, like they want to fit to their fan base. So it all kind of changes. But yes, I think that I think along with the planet, everyone has become a little bit more open-minded and not so black and white and segregated and of like you can't do this, you can't do that. People have become much more accepting in their daily lives, I think. That's a great thing. So yeah, it was definitely, and I think if you back up from bands like when we came out in early 2000s, if you back that up 10 years, it was probably even more of that way. So I think that we're all kind of evolving, and yeah, now it's like I feel that it's not as separated of like you're a rock band, you have guitars, you can only get played here, or you're hip hop, or you're straight up pop. I think a good song is a good song. And especially with social media and like, platforms like TikTok and whatever, if a song starts to blow up, it just gets played everywhere.
Yeah. I don't know, but I couldn't imagine like Nirvana, would they have crossed over back then? I think pop radio probably just played it. I don't know if they. Yeah, probably. But it probably would have been one of those things like, you can't do that, Yeah. Or else.
I'm sure that some cities probably didn't. And but that was such a massive rock hit. It's interesting when you think about, being in a band, and you think about, all the fun aspects and how, what we do. And then there's a reason why they call it the music business. There's a whole part of it that's just so much strategy. And it comes with, it kind of like, it takes you in different places and different paths. And as you're saying, like, people, whether it's label or management, they help you and they guide you, and you take certain decisions, and that really kind of shapes where you're going to head in the future. But I think, looking back, I think I'm really happy. I think it's, the band, like I said, you guys took the more rock route and you still have a super healthy career. We took the more pop route and we have a healthy career. So it's, it can work, in different ways. And I'm glad that we made the decision that we made, because who knows, we might've stuck to our guns and stick to K-Rock and all those stations that it might have played a little bit, and then it might have fizzled away, and
well, that's the thing. Yeah, all these pop radio stations were like, we're into the band, we're gonna play you. You have to do it. That's like, what if you said no, and then all of a sudden rock radio played it, and on the second record they're like, oh, we're not playing this kind of music anymore. And that's what they did to us. We didn't get played on rock radio for years. Like years and years and years. It was like they wouldn't even listen to the song, even if it was heavy and they were playing heavy stuff. And we're like, well, our song's heavy. Well, we just don't play your kind of band anymore. That's what we're getting. Like a Sum 41, we just don't play anymore.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. And sometimes, I wish that in the world that music was really just music. But sure enough, we are a vehicle. We are the face, the brand of what it represents. And it can either help you or it can hinder you in certain situations. I think that bands like us and you guys, we have a history, we have something to lean on, which is great. We have a lot of, a fan base, But at the same time, like if I feel like a band like you guys or us, if we come up with a song that's really kind of like edgy and cool and that could really possibly be a hit on whatever station, it might not become, because it's attached to, oh yeah, at some point that's kind of old news, or Simple Plan's old news, or it might help us in certain situations. Like I look at even like, you know, like Green Day and their last record that was more, it sounded kind of like alternative, sort of like the Hives type music. It was great. The songs were great, but I think a lot of people listened to that and went, and I'm not sure, but I feel a lot of people listened to that and went like, oh, this is Green Day? Doesn't sound like them. I don't want to listen to that. They don't consider it, you know?
Of course.
So it's very interesting, but it's just part of the song and dance, you know?
Yeah, and I think, you know, I'm sure you guys experienced a little bit of it too, and we experienced it. A lot of it was like the lull in our kind of what you call scene, and now it seems like it's at an all-time high again. I was trying, you know, trying to explain it to like doing interviews, you know, before tours and stuff, and people are asking me like, why do you think pop punk's back? What's it about pop punk? I'm just like, I don't know, man. I think people just figured out it's good, you know, and also I think you know, people like Machine Gun Kelly and Will Smith and all that, these kind of people making these kind of pop punk albums are kind of, you know, re-energizing that kind of scene again. What's your like take on the new stuff?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that another one that I think made a bit of a big impact was Olivia Rodrigo, even though she's not really like a straight up pop punk artist, but some of those songs really have that sort of like Paramore vibe to it. And she was such a big hit that it kind of like, oh, there's some drums here, a little bit of guitars. And then you also have all the people that grew up, you know, when we were coming out in early 2000s that were in their, you know, whether they were 10 to 20 years old. Well, now these people are in their 30s and they're excited about reliving that nostalgia, you know? So you have two things kind of fueling it, right? You have the new people that are listening to Olivia Rodrigo, Machine Gun Kelly, and they're like, oh, this is cool. What else sounds like this? Oh, it sounds like Avril Lavigne, sounds like Simple Plan, sounds like Sum 41, sounds like Green Day, Blink-182. They get excited about discovering this music that maybe their parents were listening to, which is kind of weird to say. And then you have the people that are our age that are like, hell yeah, I want to go back to these shows. So it's all kind of together, you know. I think it's a combo of that. And as you said, I think that people are realizing that, you know, the genre of pop punk or emo, whatever you want to call it, has a lot of great quality songs. It's not just a phase or a fad. It's not just some like thing that sounds a certain way, like maybe some trap music that doesn't really have a lot, although there are some great trap songs out there. A lot of it is just like, I want it to sound like this. Where is pop punk, like you guys and us, there's some quality melody and lyrics and songs that you could just play on a piano, on an acoustic guitar, and the kind of melodies and lyrics that will stand the test of time. So when you back up and you look at those, you're like, oh, this is just a great song, you know? So all those things combined makes it for, a little revival. And then you have these big festivals like When We Were Young, and just that whole, you know, even like social media with like all these emo, you know, emo's not dead stuff that I wear all the time, Matt Cutchell on Instagram. You know, all that stuff is kind of helping it and pushing it in the same direction. Hey, what's up? This is Pierre from the band Simple Plan, and I'm hanging out with my buddy Cone right here on Cone's Cave. Stick around.
That's right. This is Cone's Cave. I'm Cone from Sum 41. You are listening to my conversation with Pierre of Simple Plan, and there's more. So like Pierre said, stick around. Now we're going to get into some Simple Plan songs, and we're going to play one of my favorite Simple Plan songs after Pierre explains to me how they came up with it. Let's get back into the conversation.
So on my show, I like to just I pick my favorite song from the band, doesn't matter from what album. So I was I don't even know if you guys played this on the tour that we were on, but I heard you guys play it Soundcheck, Me Against the World.
Yeah.
It's probably my favorite of you guys. So let's talk about that one a little bit. Do you remember writing it? Do you remember recording anything, like where the lyrics come from, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so that was our second record, and so our first album we wrote it was always been me and Chuck, but like back in the first record, we kind of like all kind of jammed together a little bit and sort of made it work. And then by the second record, I had moved to Vancouver. I fell in love with some girl and I was like, I'm moving to Vancouver. And Chuck, being, you know, a big part of the songwriting with me, flew out and spent a month with me in Vancouver. We got a hotel room and we wrote together, and we wrote the whole record in like a month and a half. And I remember that one. So Chuck is kind of like a big concept guy. He'll show up with like a bunch of titles and like just a catchphrase, and then I'll kind of like figure out how to sing this thing, and then together we'll build the rest of it, and I'll get involved in all the lyrics and all that kind of stuff. But originally he comes up with like that kind of stuff. And at the time, you know, we were coming off our first record, and we had all this success. We'd sold, I think, almost 3 million copies, maybe even more. But we had this kind of chip on our shoulder because we were a band that like was rejected by some rock stations, and we played Warped Tour, and you'd have like half the crowd that loves us and half the crowd that thinks that we're too pop. We had this kind of chip on our shoulder attitude, and the second album really reflects that. And so he had this concept that was like, we should write a song that's called "Me Against the World," because I want to be myself. I want to do what I'm going to do, but it's gonna come with some resistance from some people. So he came up with this title called "Me Against the World," and this is one of the few songs that Chuck actually melodically sort of helped a lot to shape it. And he's not super musically inclined. He's a drummer, good with lyrics, but he can't sing a tune. He can't play an instrument other than drums. But we got together and he's like, I think we should do a song that sounds like heavy. And I remember him going like, it should sound like ba banana, ba banana. And I was like, what are you saying? I was like, how about something like this? Ba ba da 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 ba. He's like, yeah, that's great. So we started off with that, and together we built the whole thing. And I always write a chorus first. So we start with the chorus and then we work backwards. But that one, it was kind of like the riff started it all. Which is, I think I've told you this on tour. It's some of the riff. I usually start with the chorus, and then I have to figure out how to write a cool riff. So this is, I think, the reason why this guitar riff is probably one of our cooler ones, is because it kind of came first with the concept. So that's how it came together. And we had Bob Rock produce the record, which at the time, because we had come off this big pop record, and our first producer, Arnold Lanny, was not really into heavy tones, and we, you know, our upbringing, you know, going to Warped Tours and listening to heavier music, we wanted a record that sounded more ballsy. So we got Bob Rock to come to Montreal and make the record with us, and it just sounds exactly the way we wanted it to sound. And yeah, it's one of my favorite songs. Definitely more heavy. It's got a bit of like a Nirvana kind of wink to Nirvana in the chorus. Like it's got a bit of that melody to it. Yeah, one of my favorites as well.
We're not gonna be just a part of their game. We're not gonna be just the victims. They're taking our dreams and they tear them apart till everyone's the same. I've got no place to go. I
I also want to talk when you guys went from Reset to Simple Plan. It's going to be hard to pick one, but I asked this of all my guests. From you guys deciding, okay, Reset's over, we're going to start this new band, Simple Plan. What was like if you could pick one band that was like a huge inspiration for starting the band?
100% Blink-182. I started the band that became Reset with Chuck when we first met. We were 13 years old. And, the original band was called Roach. It was terrible. But we immediately started writing songs together. And then we got this guitar player that was from our high school that was like a super metalhead. And he could only play like, he like loved Deicide and like crazy metal bands. So Reset became a little bit more metal because of his influence. And we went on to make 2 records. We toured across Canada with 10 Foot Pole, MXPX, and had a bit of a following and a good career with that band. But a little tensions in the band. I ended up kicking out Chuck of the band probably by age 17 or 18. And because we weren't getting along. I didn't really understand because Chuck is such a driven guy, and I'm more sort of like the artist, kind of laid back. Let's just do this for the art. And he's like the manager guy, and it created a lot of tension between us in the beginning. So I kicked him out of the band, and then I quickly realized a couple of years later that like I needed that force to help me because I'm a good songwriter, and I melodically and concept I can handle that stuff, but I don't like to deal with the business side of it, and he loves doing that.
Yeah.
So that band was sort of fizzling out, and Chuck felt the need to continue in music because he loved being in a band. So we started. He met up with 2 friends of ours from high school and started what became Simple Plan without me, trying to start a band, on his own. And I think he realized that he needed someone like me as a front man, as a singer, as an energy, and a songwriter. So we kind of buried the hatchet, and at a Sugar Ray concert, funny enough, we were watching Sugar Ray at Metropolis, and he was like, "Hey man, we're starting another band, and I would be cool to have you come check it out, And so we got together. I saw what they were up to, and at the time, Enema of the State came out in 1999, and it was just blowing up. Like, What's My Age Again, all the small things, all these songs were just like, the record was so good. And we felt as kids that grew up on like Lagwagon, Pennywise, Bad Religion, The Offspring, Green Day, all that stuff, we felt like Blink had sort of created this new hybrid that was even more pop. And it was just so catchy, and it was just igniting all over the world. And we were just super inspired by that. We were inspired by the sound of it. And we were inspired also by the fact that, like, holy shit, this is beyond just playing in dirty clubs for 500 people. This is like, just massive. It's getting played on TV. It's getting played on all these stations. And we were inspired by just all of it, the sound, the potential of it. And we had been in a band since age 13. And by that time we were like 19, 20. So we had 7 years under our belts of like touring and making no money and having multiple jobs, having to pay for all this stuff. And I remember I was a bass player in Reset for a while. I bought a bass amp, and I put it I was paying it on monthly payments of like $20 a month because I bought this big Ampeg thing. And so we felt like, hey, what if we tried to start this new band, and instead of going down the same route of getting signed to an indie label and trying to play these clubs, let's try to find our way to getting signed to a major label, So we became obsessed with like writing these awesome songs and recording these great demos and putting together these packages. And we literally chased down management companies, entertainment lawyers, and major labels in the US. And sure enough, we got the attention of Andy Karp, that was working for Lava, which is kind of an imprint for Atlantic Records. So that's kind of how we started. We were inspired by Blink and by, how catchy their songs were. And for me, I was sort of in a way trapped in Reset because my guitar player was so metal that everything was always metal. And I like metal and it's cool, but I didn't want to become Pennywise. I didn't want to become, a band that just goes, and I grew up on listening to a lot of pop music at my parents' house, and Beatles and Elvis Costello, all that kind of stuff. So I kind of wanted to push the envelope on my songwriting. So Blink 182, the time when all this was happening, and just inspired us to change the sound and focus on just this new pop punk wave that was coming out, which you guys were part of as well.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I remember I owned Enema State too. I think we all did. All right, changing from Blink to Offspring, because we've both toured with Offspring. Give me your favorite non-single Offspring song.
There's so many incredible singles. Sometimes I wonder if there's even so when I was a kid, when I was younger, started skiing like most people, and then I started skateboarding at a very young age, and I wanted to snowboard. I thought it was way cooler than skiing, so I started snowboarding at age like 13, and a few of my friends were really into it as well, and we really got into snowboarding movies, and that's how I discovered The Offspring, because they were all over that shit back in the day. Yeah. They were just all over all these snowboarding movies. So I fell in love with that band with the record Ignition. And I think I don't know which songs were singles, but Session, of course, is insane. It was probably a single. I don't know if We Are One was that a single? We are one, we are free, we are gonna make ourselves stay.
The walk is filling down, we are one, we are free, we are headed for obscurity, we are one, we are free, we are gonna make ourselves sing.
Yeah, so I loved We Are One, because I remember I think there was a snowboarding movie called The Anthem, and I could be wrong here, but I think they have a bunch of songs on there, and I discovered that record. So Ignition for me was like my first taste, or one of my first tastes of sort of that Southern California punk rock, which then got me into like Lagwagon, Strung Out, 10-Foot Pole, No Use for a Name. I basically went and bought all the records that I liked from Epitaph, and then I found out this record label called Fat Records, and I bought all the records on Fat Records. And then I found out about this Swedish record label called Burning Heart, and I bought all the records on that. Because back in the day, we didn't have, it just sounds so old, but we didn't have social media. We didn't have all this stuff. We didn't have Spotify. So I would basically go to the record store, go to HMV, and I'd go and I'd see like, okay, who's on Fat Records, who's on Epitaph Records, who's on Burning Heart, and I would just buy it, and that's what I would get into.
Amazing. Yeah, it's so funny that you're saying that, because the first punk album I ever owned was Smash.
Nice.
And then it was like Dookie after that. But Smash was and I remember listening to it because I was so into like Nirvana, and I was so into like Dinosaur Jr. and Sonic Youth, and I listened, I was like, holy shit, this is really fast.
Yeah.
I was like,
it's really good.
Something.
So The Offspring, so I'm checking here. Let's see. Yeah, Ignition came out in 92. And then of course, I want to check here. When did Dookie come out? 94 or 92?
94 was Smash and Dookie.
Yeah, so Dookie. So I started off with Ignition, and then when Dookie came out, that was like just mind blowing, obviously. And it's so funny, because I grew up listening to when I discovered Offspring, I would have been 13 years old, and I was really sort of alternative. I was like a skater, snowboarder. And back in those days, I was part of that whole culture of like, this is a rock band. If you like pop music, you shouldn't listen to it. You know what I mean? And like, I remember when Green Day came out, and like all the girls in my high school started like liking it. And I was like, you guys are lame. This is my music, And I look back, and it's embarrassing. You know what I mean? Because later my band came out and suffered that same sort of stigma attached to it, and it was just part of the culture back then, Yeah. But I love Green Day to this day, still love those guys, and lucky enough to become friends with them. Mike lives in the same town as I live in, and our wives are childhood friends, so it's pretty wild. If I could tell my 13-year-old self that I would be hanging out with the guys from Green Day once in a while, it's pretty crazy.
Totally. Well, I appreciate you doing this.
Okay, cool. And take care, and I hope to see you guys soon again. I'm sure we will. I'm sure that our managers are both going like, that was really great. Let's do more.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, take care, man.
Okay, talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
Yeah.
This is Cone's Cave, And I'm Cone from the band Sum 41, and you are just listening to my conversation with Pierre of Simple Plan, two Canadians just chatting. Pierre and I just chatting away, two Canadians, one guy from Montreal, one guy from Toronto, well, Ajax, if you want to get technical. But that is my conversation with Pierre, and it was a good one. Thanks for tuning in. I'll be right back. All right, this is Cone's Cave. I'm Cone from Sum 41. Thanks for tuning in to my show. This is Season 4, Episode 1. So we got 7 more to go for this season. I just had Pierre from Simple Plan on. Hope you liked that one. Thanks again to him for coming on. And we seem to be seeing those guys all over the place. We just saw them this past summer in Europe a bunch of times. And I'm guessing we're going to see them again, hopefully, before our band ends at the end of January. But who knows? Maybe not. But we've done a lot of great tours with them in the last few years. And I was happy to have Pierre on the show. All right, I'm going to run. Thank you to Adobe Radio for having me and my show Cone's Cave on their station. I will be back next Monday, same time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Until then, I gotta go.